10 more. Got 5 more. I see Darius on the wall.
Oh, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming this evening. Good to see our guests here today. Call this meeting to order. This is a special call meeting today. It's a call meeting. And the purpose of this call meeting is for a public hearing. Give the public an opportunity to ask questions, make comments, relate to a still plan that we put together for economic development projects that's coming out on Interstate 63. We have had, by law, publicize this public hearing, and we've had public notices in City Hall, our Facebook page, our website, Sun Herald, starting on May 31st. By law, we had to publicize this for at least 10 days. A copy of this plan has also been in our city clerk's office for anyone that wanted to review it. With that being said, can we pause just for a moment of silence before we actually begin our meeting? As we pause for a moment, we always like to ask us to think about our city, all of our people, especially those people that are sick and frail for this reason. And our senior citizens and who I got a chance to meet with this morning, to take pictures with and have a good conversation with as they enjoy this month as Transportation Month. Thank you. You have a roll call.
Alderman Chapman. Alderman Cunningham.
Here.
Alderman Wilson. Alderman Dubus. Alderwoman Chambers. Alderman Chastain.
Here.
Alderman Lennon.
Here, Wilson is online.
There we go.
Is there anyone online?
Alderman Wilson.
Alderman Wilson. Alderman Wilson. Alderman Wilson.
Alderman Wilson present.
Thank you, sir. Glad to have you. Gentlemen, we have a copy of our agenda in front of us. And the main agenda is the public hearing. And I call this public hearing to order. The public hearing now will include both TIP plans that we have for Canon, Nissan, Canon Ford Lincoln, and also for Chief Automotive. So as we talk about this public hearing, guests just be aware that any questions or comments you have about either one of those, because they're shorted on different items on the agenda, the reason I'm saying that, but this public hearing is for both of those items. And once we close this public hearing and vote on it, we'll then vote on them separately. But this public hearing is for both of those items. So any question you might have, a comment about either one of those in this public hearing, it is for both of them, just to be clear about that. When we vote on it, it will be a separate vote. Okay. We have with us now Mr. Lawrence. He's here, been the consultant for the automotive dealership as well as the city that put this plan together. And we asked him to facilitate this. Some of our first just make you aware of what this CHIP plan is, so that you will understand what that is.
Before he speaks, Mayor, can I speak?
Yes, sir.
I offer motion to approve the agenda.
Oh.
Second the motion. Good move.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you, brother.
And just for the minutes, if y'all could do a motion to go in the public hearing, some of the bond attorneys want that, that would be helpful for our record.
For the record, if we, a motion to open this public hearing.
So moved. Second.
Moves and second that we open this public hearing for today, June 16th.
The public hearing is related to the TIF with Canon, Nissan,
Yes.
Canon, Ford Lincoln, and Chief Automotive Group Project.
For the record, we open this public hearing for Canon, Nissan, Canon, Ford, Lincoln, and Chief Automotive Group. All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes.
Okay, so I promised to be very brief tonight. First, I want to just recap what a TIF plan is for the benefit of the audience, if you're not familiar with it. A tax approved finance plan is an economic conducive plan that allows a project that is not feasible to go forward on its own to get help from the city and the county to make it possible. The most important thing is the city is not pledging good faith and credit of the city in any way, shape, or form. You can't use any city money towards the payment of a TIF bond. The only monies that are being spent on the bond are the monies that the developers will generate in their project by building the buildings and creating ad valorem tax, and by selling product and paying sales tax. Will generate rebated sales tax to the city. So the only thing being pledged are taxes that are being created by the projects within the legal description of those project sites. Not one penny of public money can be used for that benefit. In fact, whatever the fee was for the newspaper ad, the bond attorney costs, any other costs the city's incurred to adopt this plan will be reimbursed to the city when the bonds are issued. So there'll be no money going out. That's probably the most important thing I should say here relates to the board. The way a TIF plan works is we have established a legal means and bounds description for each of these two projects. That means that when we adopt this plan, you're saying that any expenses that are public infrastructure costs that are related to that project that occur within the project site can be reimbursed by the city using those funds, the taxes that that project was creating. Reimbursement, and then the developers in turn will turn that public infrastructure over to the city through a conveyance, titleship, however, whatever applies based on the project itself. The three exceptions to that are parking, lighting, and landscape. Those three items will not be conveyed back to the city, nor does the city want them. Developers continue to maintain them, and they'll continue to be taxable ad valorem or inventory for your tax purposes. That's kind of the big picture. And what I thought I would do is just walk you through some of the highlights of both of these projects, and then we can open it up for any questions or discussion. So I'll start with the Canon Nissan project. They're building, these are both right across the street from each other on Highway 63. The Nissan dealership is, and the Ford dealership are going to be in two phases. It's right next to the current Toyota dealership, just coming south on 63. It's 15.48 acres. They're anticipating on spending about $20,600,000 on the new dealerships themselves, the actual buildings. This is almost double the dealership cost about 3 years ago. Give you a sense of how tough this project's been to get forward. And without the help of the city and the county, I can assure you this would not go forward. So it's either you have empty land generating no taxes and no jobs, or you help with this project through this TIF process. They also have another $8.8 million of inventory and FF&E. So it's a total project investment of about $31,070,000 for the project. Each of these dealerships will take about 10 months to build. They're both ready to proceed. I think the other project will start first because I know the Canon dealership is still getting bids right now. They expect after the project or during the construction of the projects, they both will have about 40 to 60 temporary construction jobs. And those are direct construction jobs. We don't measure the secondary, the subs that come in behind products that are being built or delivered, these kinds of things. This is hard people on the job for 10 months working. It should be between 40 and 60 people for that 10 to 12 months. Once the project's completed, Canon is expecting to hire 120 full and part-time employees, an annual payroll of $5.3 million. Of the sales tax rebates, the city gets 7% of 3% of the sales. On car sales, instead of 7%, cars are taxed 5%. And because of politics from way before all of us were born, the city only gets 18.5% of the 3%. So they don't get the total amount. The other 2% ends up going to the county indirect election. We have to talk offline about how that works. But at the end of the day, the city's rebates anticipated from this deal, these two dealerships, is $466,200 annually. And that's based on the first year projected cost, and that's also based on the current dealership. They didn't bring the number up. I can assure you they're not spending $30 million to build a new dealership to get the same sales. So we decided to be very conservative and keep all the numbers based on what we already know, which is the current dealerships. Currently, the land associated with Cannon's two new dealerships is generating for ad valorem taxes $15,623 annually. When the project's finished, I'll read it from, it'll be $399,927. $143,784 goes to the school district. You can't pledge school taxes towards a TIF plan. So at the end of the first year, the school will start receiving annually $140,000 approximately. So it'll all be based on the actual assessed value that the tax assessor creates when the project's finished. My numbers were kind of estimates, but they're pretty close. I actually did go to the assessor and validate the numbers. We're probably within 2 or 3% of each other the way he would assess it, but he wants to see the final product, obviously. But I just wanted to give you an idea. They're going from effectively almost no money in ad valorem taxes to close to $400,000. And it's a portion of those to fund sales tax rebates and this ad valorem tax that we're asking the city to pledge towards a debt instrument to reimburse the developer for the public infrastructure that they in turn invest in the city. The alternative is the city puts the money out and builds that infrastructure for them. But as we all know, the city doesn't have that kind of money just sitting in the bank waiting for a developer. That's the purpose of the plan. Saying, you go build your project to our, you build all the public infrastructure to our specification. And when you're finished, meaning you got a certificate of occupancy from the city and the assessors assess the property. And if we're using sales tax, at least 6 months of actual retail sales have to occur, if not more. It's typically ends up being more. We'll get a certificate from the Department of Revenue that says this is what they actually did, not what the homeless guests a year ago. From that, the bond attorney, through a series of proceedings for this board, they'll come in here and they will, number one, validate any receipts that are turned in to make sure that they're legal under the statute. They then will get these certificates and size the bond based on the revenue. It doesn't matter what the developer paid for that infrastructure. You can only reimburse them for what those taxes would support because you can't contribute any money to it. And they'll do it in a conservative way as it relates to the rebated sales tax because you don't know if the economy is going to be good or bad. So they'll discount that down anywhere from 10 to 20%. The ad valorem side, the developer is going to sign a statement saying, I'm going to ask for a reduction in property tax value for the life of the bond. So it guarantees that that premium will be covered. And then from that, the board will do another action saying, yes, you can go do this amount, and you'll send the bond attorney out to try to sell that bond to anybody. You can buy, I can buy it, or the dealers can buy it, the bank can buy it, anybody can buy it. It's an informal process. If no one buys the bond, there's absolutely nothing you can do for the developer. You cannot reimburse them. So they understand that's their risk, putting their money out to build public infrastructure. And the only way they can get reimbursed is if somebody buys that TIF bond at the other end. And both of these developers are fully aware of that risk and I think are even prepared to buy the bond if that makes sense for them at the end of the day. So with that, that's the numbers in the Cannon deal. The Chrysler Dodge Jeep dealership and Coast Chevrolet. They have, this is across the highway. They've already done $2.8 million of dirt work to mitigate the wetlands. They have 13.14 acres. They're anticipating two dealerships will cost them $23,816,000 for the buildings, and they'll have another $9,330,000 of inventory. So it will be a total private investment of $33,146,000. Currently, they are expecting $58 million sales, and that's again based on what they're doing in Pascagoula. They expect to have 58 full part-time jobs with an annual salary of $4.1 million. Currently, they are paying no tax. It's because it was wet. The fee was way, apparently, it's like $40 fee. It's their own tax on this land. I'm not real clear on how that happened. But we expect their ad valorem taxes to increase to $495,776. Based on their $58 million of sales, which is again reflective of what they're doing today, the city will get rebates of $355,565. The total of these two properties on the rebating side, the two sales tax rebates, represents about 22% of what the city is currently getting in total, all sales tax for the entire city. That's how big this is. That's a remarkable number to see. I'd love to bring lots of those to you. But ultimately, any monies that are not used towards the payment of a bond just go into your general fund. Same thing with the county. County's public hearing will be on Monday. They're right behind you one step, and we expect them to adopt their version of the plan. When this is completed, there will be a security reimbursement agreement coming before you. That's the document that sort of obligates the city to say about build these buildings to our specifications, get it complete, turn in your receipts, and then we will, to the best of our ability, issue a bond to reimburse you for as much as we can based on the taxes you generate. And then there'll be an interlocal agreement that you'll sign with the county because they're doing this exact proceeding separate from you, anticipating the work with you. But the RETA Act says that you and the county can work together on a common economic development project. So they'll consummate the two TIF plans into a co-developed interlocal agreement, frankly, that'll come before your board. And then when that's completed, the bond attorney that you've hired will then go take it to the Attorney General for approval, and then it gets filed with the Secretary of State. The developers are then told, go build, go do what you can do, and you have no more obligation after that. You're done. You just have to issue permits and do what you normally do when someone wants to build in your community. They have to meet all the requirements. When all those requirements are met, they will then submit their receipts, and then your bond attorney will validate the receipts and come back before your board to test. They turned in $2 million receipts and $1.8 million is qualified. You'll get a number. And then they'll get those certificates and again ask for a motion of the board to accept the sizing of the bond. And you'll direct the attorney to go out to the market. And then based on who responds to that bid process, there may be 2, 3, 4 people who want to buy the bonds. They have different offers, different interest rates. It's totally your decision and your discretion. You have to consider the bond. You pick the best one. The attorney usually will recommend them for a reason on a basis. You'll vote then to authorize the mayor to execute that loan agreement. And while that's going on, the bond attorney will write up all the conveyance documents with the private developers conveyance the city, the sidewalks, the streets, or whatever is applicable in the project. Then the loan is executed by the mayor. The person buying the loan will then write a check to the city of Moss Point. You'll put it in your general fund. You'll reimburse yourself for any and all expenses related to this TIF plan completely. The county can also get reimbursed under that fund. Right now, as far as I know, they'll just have the one newspaper ad. I'm not aware of any other expenses that they've incurred. Once that's settled, the developer then can come in, they convey everything to the city, and you provide them with the balance of the money that came from the TIF plan, and they move on their way. And then every year you'll get a bill for principal and interest from the guy or person or entity that bought the bond, and you can only pay that note based on the taxes you actually got from this development. So if they don't pay their taxes, there's nothing you can do. You just say to the bondholder, I'm sorry, when the money gets here, we'll pay you. You're effectively administering and facilitating this TIF bond. It's not a general obligation bond where you're borrowing money against the goodwill of the city. It's just you're facilitating it. Because interest rates are going up, there's a chance interest rates could go down. You reserve the right to refinance the bond, accelerate payoff of the bond. You have complete control all the way through the life of the bond. So that's it. Those are the two pieces. So with that, I'll open up the floor for anybody to get questions.
We'll refer to the audience first before we come to our board members, see if they got an additional question. Any members here, y'all have any questions, anything we could explain to you, make it clear? You understand where the property is to what we're talking about, right? On the interstate, on 63. Chief Auto is Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram. They're on the east side of the highway.
And Chevrolet.
And Chevrolet, yeah, they're on the east side of the highway. Okay. Nissan, which will be coming first, is next door to Toyota. they'll be on that side of the highway. Nissan's coming first, then you'll have Ford and Lincoln coming later. Later meaning a year or so down the road, okay? So that's the location that we're talking about. We could reap the benefit from the money within a year. Okay. And the key thing that Mr. Lyons says is that there's no city money going into any of this. It's everything is coming from the developer. And the city will be reimbursed for whatever it does put in through this rebate.
And any rebate they get is strictly off of the sales they generate. It's not taking anything off of what the city has existing. It's just whatever they generate, they get a percentage of, and the city gets a percentage. And the school district probably makes out the best, and they live with a few.
Yeah, but you can still tax, they'll get a big check.
Okay,
No.
did you have a question?
We're just checking.
Board members, there are questions for you.
Yes. You say that would be, the city will have no money put in here, but then you say we'll be reimbursed. So what are we gonna be reimbursed for?
If you
If we-
spent $100 or whatever the cost to run the notice for this public hearing, you'll get reimbursed.
Okay,
You've hired Sue Fairchild to be your bond attorney, her bill will be reimbursed under the bond.
okay.
You'll have no expense.
And typically they don't bill us, they just wait and get paid out of the bond, so we wouldn't have to figure out where it came from the general, but that's how they work.
And if they don't go forward with the project, the developers are actually, you would send the bill to them, they'll pay you back for whatever you defer.
No question?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'd like to get some clarification on Article 8, duration of the tax increment finance existence. And it says 25 years or as long as TIF debt obligation is outstanding. So what qualifying
So
entity can extend that?
So the 25 years is the shelf life of the TIF plan itself. And what that means is that any bonds that are issued, because you'll see language in there, that bonds can be issued in one or more series. All bonds have to be paid off within 25 years. Most bonds today are at 15 years. So you're kind of telling the developer, build whatever you're going to build and be finished by 10 years if you want to have a 15-year bond. If you're in the 11th year, you can only do a 14-year bond. But what we're doing is, this is an economic inducement. So here they are today with ideas of what they want to build. If their business is successful and they want to expand it, in fact, one of them's already talking about a pretty major automotive repair, like a paint shop thing. That's another $5 or $6 million investment. Well, we've allowed room in the TIF plan for them to create more tax revenue for the city, because it's not likely they're going to get reimbursed completely for the expenses that are eligible in their TIF for reimbursement. In other words, they may have $2 million of eligible receipts to be reimbursed, but the money from the dealership will only support $1 million worth of a bond. So the money that you didn't reimburse just kind of goes forward. If they turn around and create a new source of revenue, a different building, a markable increase in sales, they can come back to the board and say, hey, remember that $1 million I didn't get reimbursed on? Well, I have that, plus I got another 200,000, and I've got a new source of revenue that I'd like to borrow, have y'all borrow a bond off of, and do a second bond series. So you're creating a carrot that just says spend more money, as much money as you can in West Point, Mississippi, because everybody wins. And so that's what that 25 years is saying. All bonds have to be paid off for 25 years. That's the end of the game, that we don't go further than that.
There's nothing qualifying that would extend
And
it.
I put a limit on the actual bond of 15 years because I think that's a reasonable amount of time in today's terms. That you don't want to do a longer bond. You can legally go up to 30 years on both of those. And I've had one case where the developer negotiated an 18-year bond, but they bought it themselves. That's for the city to do that. And you will see language in the security reimbursement agreement that I don't want you to get confused on, so I just want to mention it here, since we're all here together as a group. The bond attorney will have language that says you're pledging up to 100% towards the payment of the bond, but you're sizing the bond based on what we agreed to, which was 60% of the rebated sales tax and 100% of the ad valorem tax. They're doing that so that when the bonds for sale, it makes it more marketable. It gives you the ability to pay the bond off quicker. In other words, the other 40% of that income tax, that rebated sales tax that's coming into the city, if y'all want to pay that bond off quicker, you have the right to do that because we authorized it in that agreement. So you're going to see that language up to 100%. But remember, the bond size will be based on the 60% number. It won't support 100%. So it catches people sometimes, like, wait, you said this, but that's just to help make it more marketable. If you can't sell the bond, it's kind of a bad story. So we try to make it as good as we can. I've also got language in there that and I've had this happen once actually, where if you can't sell the bond because they don't feel comfortable with it, the buyers, you can make the developer put up money or CD or credit to guarantee that the taxes will get paid so that the bond is more marketable. So that language is in there as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I may have gone too deep there, but I wanted to.
No. Well, it's sort of insinuated that there is some provision for extension, but it's not.
You have zero risk and you have a lot more voting to do before you even issue a bond, and it's your discretion.
Right.
So just make that real clear. You're in control of the story. Now, all you're doing is authorizing the bond, the plan actually.
Any other question?
Good.
Yes, Leonard,
Good, thank you.
Ms. Chambers. Thank you so much, Ms. Long. Can we get a motion to close this? Other question? Can we have a motion to close this public hearing?
So move.
We move in second that we close this public hearing. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I didn't think that, ayes have it. We are down to now voting on these resolutions for the next step, which would be 1.2, approve decline the resolution of the mayor and board of aldermen of the city of Moss Point, Mississippi, approving the adoption of the implementation of the tax incentive financing plan for Canon, Nissan, Canon Ford Lincoln projects, Moss Point, Mississippi, June 23rd, June 2023, submitted by Attorney Amy St. Pé.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it. 1.4, approve decline of resolution, Mayor, Board of Aldermen, City of Moss Point, Mississippi, approving the adoption of the implementation of the tax incentive financing plan, plan for Chief Automotive Group Project, Moss Point, Mississippi, June 2023, submitted by Amy St. Pé. Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve. Second.
Been motion and second to, motion by Justine, second by Leonard, that we approve 1.4. This is for plan Chief Auto Group Project of Moss Point. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Nays? Ayes have it. Carry. Motion to adjourn.
So move. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you very much.
They tell you about,
Tell me,
Even if you ask someone, people, like,
it's gonna make the sign.